In this episode, I actually sat down with the great man, Paul Tonich, one of the best real estate agents in WA, who also was a guy who taught me a whole lot about social media back when I used to go and speak in his office. Well, I probably learned more from him when I was sort of engaged to train his people. I probably learned more from him than he learned from me. But I went along to interview Paul as part of my upcoming book, The $1 Million Agent. And while I did that, I sort of captured the recording. So I thought, hey, let's make that an episode of Real Estate Renegades. So here for your viewing and learning pleasure, the great man, probably the best social media example in Australian real estate, and certainly no slouch as a coach in his own right. So I'm honoured that he called me in to coach his team. This is Paul Tonich. You want the normal real estate training you've been told a million times? Make cold calls, knock on doors. Best be switching off now, because in this podcast, we go out of the box using unknown tactics, primarily, that the real estate industry's never heard of, in order to get you called in more often, convert those listings, and get more success without the painful cold calling. Listen up, we're in for a ride. This is Real Estate Renegades. 20 years in biz. Paul Tonich,
Yeah.
Congratulations, 2 decades, mate.
Thank you. It doesn't feel like 20 years. It just feels like lots of days, to be honest with you. I think when you break it up, been through a few phases over 20 years. There's during the Perth boom stage, there was the arrogant phase. The GFC, there is, I can't believe this is happening stage. Mm-hmm. That then caused the drought, which was the cleansing stage, time to be humble stage, and relearn how to sell in a different market. So over 20 years, it's been endless lessons, really. Yep. There's never been a time over that 20 when I reflect that you can say, oh, this is how you do real estate, and that's going to look after you for 20 years. Fundamentally, there's some things that you would say are characteristics that make someone survive that period of time. The one thing I always talk about when I'm asked about that period is, how important is sustainability in the whole setup of what you do every day. And I think I was watching a podcast yesterday. I can't remember who it was. It was late, but they talked about how important it is to make sure that you understand from day one, if you're really going to have a career, that it's about the long game. Like the long game. And unfortunately, due to our industry's ability to not be fair when it comes to doing all the right things and you will get paid, it doesn't always happen. So when cash flow affects emotion, it dilutes logic. True. And logically you think this is a good thing to do for the long game. But when cash flow disappears, it's amazing how that can change the perspective of somebody. I've been under cash flow pressure personally as a business owner, and I know how ruthless I had to be on myself not to allow myself to start dealing with scenarios that aren't really right in front of me, and that distract me from me being my best in that moment, which meant when I went into homes, especially in some of the areas that I work in, you're up against some amazing agents, and if they're focused and you're just off a little bit, you miss out. Yep. You're vulnerable.
You don't get paid for 98% of a good job in this game. Doesn't that suck?
Yeah, and
every other job you get a commendation for doing 98%.
Yeah, well. Absolutely, it is. It's cruel. It is cruel. 20 years. What I have learned is I've learned a lot about myself and what makes me tick. And if there was a gift that anyone could allow themselves to be open to receiving, it's probably the gift of self-discovery, not just discover what real estate's about.
Gary Vee calls it self-awareness.
And some people say it's mindfulness, but I think everyone's got a code which is in some way a secret just to them, that they know get those ingredients together and you're in your flow. Outside of that, can coaches make that happen? My belief on coaches and watching other elite agents is that they're there just to trigger you, not to make you. So to have a coach or to listen to someone like, say, a James Stostovan or, a Matt Steinwade, or, a Matt LaHood and his leadership, when I listen to those people, I have no expectation about anything else besides the ability for me to take something from that and create it again in a way that it makes me better. And I think that's a difference as a speaker myself, that I felt really comfortable after a few years that whatever I was going to share with the audience was and should and will never be one size fits all. It'll just be something different for everyone that day that is missing one piece of a puzzle that you can accidentally drop out of your mouth that they can put into their picture and they're a different person forever.
Yeah. Sometimes I heard Jim Rohn talk about it, that sometimes we'll come along as a coach or a speaker or whatever the case may be, and they've already got 3 digits in the lock, and we just come along with that 4th number, and it makes all the difference.
Yeah. I think when we want to be and I've been a coach in sport, business, and lots of industries, and I think at the start I learnt that I used to, and in fairness, out of ego, I used to want to be the best coach, but that made everything about me. Instead of teaching my student or my agent by letting him learn through different ways, and sometimes that is through failure. It is through letting them discover the wrong ways to make sure that it hurt that much that they never want to go back there again, so that the right ways become much more attractive when motivation dies off. When you've been somewhere you don't want to go again, that's usually a better motivation than trying to chase a prize that you can fall off the back of.
So yeah, that's why I hang out with you, man, because I learned seriously, I'm probably still in that first phase you mentioned.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you've seen the way I market. I put myself all about my personal brand, surround myself with the greatest minds I can do so, and then up until you said that, I thought, shit, I've always thought my job is to go in there and fix them.
Yeah.
But yeah, that doesn't leave room for what you just said. Shit.
Yeah, it's like
that's why I like hanging out with you, bro.
No, I suppose it's just what you're ready for. I've just done a merge with John Percadani, and he's a very strong leader. If you probably asked me 5 years ago, would that be something that I would entertain? I would probably safely say it would be a no. 5 years on, I'm actually ready for another person to step in and lead me to be my best. And I think without those people around you, it is hard to discover, what you could become or what you can become. Yeah. And I think we also make a big mistake of thinking that it's just about our industry. It's so not. It's, watching kids in a playground, you can learn stuff. Watching animals, watching different industries. And the funny thing is, you always want to be doing something first in your industry so that you have that clear competitive advantage. But unless you're studying industries that are totally different, you're never going to come up with something first. So how do you do that? Well, you go to things that on face value don't make sense, but you look at that presentation, at that business, at that coach, and you look inside of what they're delivering to take what you want out of it. And it might not even make sense to the speaker, the coach, or the industry, but once you start knowing what you need to do to be the first at something in your industry, you don't go looking on all the usual places the others are looking.
That's it, mate. I tell you, I made a career out of that. They voted me last year a finalist for the Thought Leader of the Year, and I thought, that's crazy given that I haven't had an original idea in my life, but I just looked in industries other than everyone insularly looking at all the other real estate coaches. I just went globally to different marketing coaches around the world, and they think I'm an innovator. Didn't come up with anything. I just copied off somewhere different rather than everyone copying off, say, because there's a whole lot of Lee Woodward, people teaching Lee's content out there, because they all look at each other. Who all learned from Lee. So it's interesting, that phenomenon.
If I was to say, I've been doing real estate 20 years, and in Perth, I think when I joined, I was 26, and the average age was 58. It was very different to the Melbourne and Sydney markets. And I remember first going to one of Lee Woodward's seminars, and it was mind-blowing that this guy had actually been over for a couple of years, but no one was actually implementing what he was actually teaching.
Well,
so
if everyone implemented all that, there'd be a whole lot more $1 million
you'd
performers out
see
there.
all these people go to Lee's conferences, and people will be taking notes and they're listening to Lee, but I still, they would have had a couple of years jump on me. But I think the only difference at that stage, and why Lee's training was so beneficial to me, wasn't about how I delivered that into the marketplace, is that everyone else wasn't doing it because no one else was really doing it. And it's funny how they didn't think they could just be the first at that. And when I built my first EBU, and we use the word EBU, and Lee came to me and said, he looked at my position in the industry and said, if you're going to chunk this up and build it, you've got to get this EBU up and running. And I trying to look around the industry, no one really had one. But he had been coaching this for a couple of years, and so listening, adapting, knowing is very far cry from doing.
I remember in one of my marketing seminars as a student, when I was learning all this craziness, I went away and did some things with what I was taught. And the next seminar I went back to, the same guy, it was quarterly, we used to catch up. We paid a heap of money and all this. And I think that's key. We all paid the same heap of money. But the next seminar I went to, just the second time, they put me up on stage and gave me a 20-minute spot to share what I'd been doing with the audience because I'd implemented. And the thing that freaked me out is, well, didn't you lot do any? And it seems they didn't. I was one of the only ones that did anything with the info. And I think that's indicative of people. I don't think we do much with learning.
And that's, I'm a realist because, outside of probably being good in my industry, I'm still a father and I've still got teenage kids, and, trying to be a good father is just as difficult. I could sell anything, but try and watch me trying to sell bedtime. Trying to watch me, you're going to miss your train and bus. I'm Iceman at the negotiation table, but I lose my shit when they don't get up in the morning.
Wow.
And my wife just looks at me and I go, wow, I can't believe I said that, because that was no good for the negotiation. And we forget that, we get good at this process-driven stuff, but how good are we then at doing that in our personal lives? And if you talk to any of the guys that have been at the top of the mountain, and I say with confidence, I've been at the top of the mountain. I was writing the dream figures with James and Matt back 10 years ago, and it's a pretty empty, horrible place if you're looking for anything outside of just your ego being, really passionately stroked.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because Chris Gilmore was doing a talk just the other day on that, and he was saying that when you hit that elusive, that first big milestone, the 7 figures, the $1 million agent that we all bang on about, that it seems every second agent is that, supposedly, if you listen to Facebook. But he was saying he didn't know where the ticker tape parade was. Where was all the confetti and all of that? It's just the same thing. And in fact, maybe even kind of empty. It's good for us coaches. We get to bang on about how our students are $1 million agent, but it's certainly not the be all and end all.
No, it's not. It's it's always nice if you're going to do something. Why not do it, amazingly well? And if you're going to, the reality is, if you asked any of the people that are earning top money, they don't go out with the goal of earning top money. They monitor their money, because with earning top money includes other overheads as well. But the business brings the business. Like, if you're gone that far in your career, you soon learn that earning top money is having the ability to pay people to do things that you don't want to do anymore, and paying them well so they hang around with your abnormal speed of life. And that speed of life is something why, I think if I said this right now, if you're listening and you are a performer between maybe 600 and $1 million, and you're so determined to keep growing that, and you are building a EBU, and this is not everyone, but many of them can sit back and look at the long list of past players in their team where you've just churned and burnt PA after PA after PA after PA, and you think that PAs don't work, but the reality is they're not at your pace, and part of getting where you want to go fast, where you see being effective and driven, they see just you being impatient and unrealistic.
Well, it's funny that, most entrepreneurs would agree, if you've owned your own business, and most real estate agents, if they don't, should think like entrepreneurs, that we wake up, live and go to bed thinking about our entrepreneur, our job, so to speak, our career. Whereas most employees, including PAs, the job is the vehicle to live their life outside of that. Yeah. And so I think that's the difference. We think they're all in like we are, but this is just their enabling thing. Otherwise, they'd be us.
Yeah.
If they thought like that.
It is such a craft. It's such a, you're asking to give so much and to share your wins and losses. And, over time, the way they feel about your wins and losses changes dramatically.
Absolutely.
With the way their life changes.
Yeah.
And
sometimes even with resentment.
Yeah, and that's not unfair.
Yeah.
That's because the difference between what you earn to they earn is always going to be unrealistic.
And it's almost it almost breeds, without monitoring, like an adversarial relationship. I've heard people say, "Oh no, not my Rosie, she's family," and you think, it's there. It's hard to ignore the differential that you get a new car every year, she gets one every 5 years, or he, so it's an interesting dynamic. Yeah. Mate, I've asked this of all the guys. I caught up with Jay Stanley, who had some amazingly kind things to say about you. Yeah.
We have a really, besides having a great friendship, I really respect when Jay first came to me, and I coached him many, many, many years ago. Now I'll say this in the nicest way. I thought, how's this guy going to go? Because I just went, he's a bit dry, and he is just the ultimate version of, this is what you do, don't change the ingredients, bake the cake, and don't leave anything out, don't do the things you just like. And Jay's ability to stick to a plan through the, profitable times, non-profitable times, and stick to a plan is second to no one ever I've seen. And I have the ultimate respect for him, because when I sat there and you fall in love with maybe the more charismatic, who doesn't love a Matt Steinway,
6'8",
fucking
gorgeous
prick of a bloke who's wouldn't have a fucking ounce of fat on his body. It's just oozing. And, if you really wear Matt's head, you probably go, Jesus, what a unit. Everyone has their own hang-ups, but Matt doesn't portray that, and he's charismatic, and things just roll off his tongue so smoothly, and you've got to admire how gracefully he goes about it. And Jay is not exactly like Matt Steinman, as you know, but he, in his own right, does what he does well to the best he can do it, instead of trying to be Matt. True. But if you broke it down, the fundamentals would still be the same. Jay is one of those guys, just seeks out the best and just drills down to what it is, their magic ingredient. And he's collected magic ingredients of so many people and has made that his core plan on being better was to seek from the best. And a great example that we're all going to have different strengths, but Jay never thought for 1 minute that would limit him to not being up there with the most elite agents. He just decided how that would work for him. And he's a great example of being so focused on playing to your strengths that everyone else around you doesn't see anything special, so they can't work out how he does it, and they just get jealous of him. He started off as a client, as he did as coaching, but I feel really proud to say he's a friend, but probably has flipped it on me, and he's become someone I admire in relation to how he goes about his business.
Ditto. I wish if we could transfer that X factor of being able to, for 15 years, work to a plan, make more calls than any human. I don't think anyone could go toe to toe with him on any given day and keep up with him.
Yeah.
Even, because the 2 phone thing, you see him go, it's staggering.
Yeah.
And so masterclass. So it's been my honour to be, kind of worked with him for about a year and a half. We worked together, and I'd drive down, I'd fly to Perth, then drive to Bunbury just to have the honour of coaching someone at the top of their game, because this was a long time after you kind of already made the beast. He was just after some tweaks from me, you know. And but anyway, where I got onto Jay, this is a Jay bloody Stanley love fest. I asked Jay this: do you remember? So I'm asking this of you. Do you remember your first week in real estate? And if so, how did the first week of Paul Tonich go? Some 20 odd years ago. Who did you work for first?
I worked for Torrens Real Estate in Yokine. One of the most kindest, nicest men that I've ever met in my life, a guy named Robert DiPrinzio. See, my first week in real estate was, it would have been like no other.
Really?
Yeah, it would have been like no other. This gentleman offered me a job. I'd been offered a number of jobs. I was just exiting a job which I was...
was it straight the force into the...
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And I was... that same week, I was on the front page and on Today Tonight. Okay. So I was like, at that stage, probably in a position mentally that I thought I was currently unemployable.
Right.
And this gentleman rang me.
What else but real estate?
Oh, no, it didn't happen. It didn't happen that way. I had job offers coming in from everywhere.
Right.
But none of them had an ABN number attached to them. So
Okay.
And one of my most spectacular jobs was I got invited to join a international kidnapping team. And my wife, who was my fiance at the time, probably just said it's not something that we probably could cope with if we're going to try and build a family unit. My fiance being an international kidnapper. Apparently we were kidnapping for the right reasons, but the whole word kidnapping concerned her and overseas. So there was a number of job offers, and then I got a phone call from a gentleman, Robert DiPrinzio, who I played football with his son, and I'd sought the guidance of his son on a number of occasions in relation to buying properties. I'd bought a few houses by then, and this gentleman got his son to give me a call and said, do you want to come in for an interview? And I came in and I sat in front of Robert and I said, you've probably not got me at my best at the moment. You would have seen possibly me on TV, and you would have seen me on the front page of the papers. And he said, Paul, I watched you growing up with my son. I saw you play football. Far as I'm concerned, how I position where you're going to stand in life and how you would be inside our organisation comes from a long history of seeing you grow up and your family. And he offered me a job on the spot, and I accepted. And so it was from there. It was quite a interesting time because the average age when I walked in there, I felt like I was in, I don't know, they thinking I was to be babysat. Mm. And it was, I look back now, no one had a laptop. I remember at that office, I was the first one to get a laptop. I was the first one to get a digital camera. Everyone would tell me, and I could hear them talk amongst themselves, that I wouldn't last, and this wouldn't happen, and this wouldn't happen. And I didn't take it on thinking I wouldn't be challenged, but I really enjoyed the challenge of waking up, going into what would be a industry or a marketplace, competing and having the ability to be rewarded for the results I achieved, which previous to that I was in an elite field, but I was paid a wage. But I was driven just to be elite. The money never came into it. So when I went into real estate, I just felt if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be elite. I'm not going to do this to not be elite. So the money never came in to consideration, but fast track that 3 years, I was the number one agent in the real estate industry, and held that for 7 years continually. And it wasn't down to more than having the right people in my ear at the right time who believed in me. And I think for me, that left a gift forever, because when I now am in that position myself, I can probably see things in people because of the way I was treated, maybe better than the average person in my industry. And yeah, have I picked up some, rough diamonds that I've polished up? Absolutely. And would I have been able to maybe do that if it wasn't done for me? Maybe not. And that gift of them giving me an opportunity in probably one of the most challenging times of my life is very different to everyone calling me once I've had some runs on the board and telling me how amazing I could be in this industry if with the right company.
Yeah.
If I was to talk about how I left them after a year and I had such an impact on them and they had such an impact on me in many different ways that I went back and coached them as their coach about a year and a half later, but I never lost their friendships, and they actually understood that from what they could see that what vehicle they had was never going to be enough for me, what they had. And I had so much respect because of that, because I now see in certain people that I would have come on that just because they leave me is not a bad thing. There's some people that have left me recently that even in their own mind thought I'd be angry and thought I'd be upset at them, but I really respect that this is my journey, it's my office, we don't own anybody, and if they want to spread their wings and find out how good they can be, we have no right as owners of a business to make that entitlement of signing on forever. Yeah. It's not in the contract. And I feel, and much to sometimes the people don't even think it or know it, I feel really proud of people that leave us and go on to be bigger and better. Because whatever you taught them either drives them or allow them to be that. And that first break in real estate in that first week, it's amazing. I still remember, and I could smell the room. I could smell the office. It was an old style office, but it never leaves you. I think it's a very humbling thing to reflect on and actually think about how far you've come. And it is a long way. And I think every now and then, if you go up that ladder of the industry, reminding yourself how hard it was, that moment tends to allow you to look around the room and think, who can I help who I would have loved being next to me when I was back there?
For sure.
And I think that's important from every high achiever to take the time sometimes, which is difficult because people come and go in our industry, and you can get jaded and you can get put off helping people because, are they going to be there next week? And maybe they won't be, but if they had some time with you, they would be. So they're kind of things that you reflect on, I think, later on in your career that you saw were only little things when they happened, but when you look back at where you've come from, they were monumental like all these years later, not at that time. Yeah.
And when did, like you mentioned, you had the right people with the right word in your ear, believing in you at that right time. As someone who, like myself, I've been in this very room completely underqualified to be coaching you and your team, but you're sitting there taking notes when even a rookie coach is sitting there coaching. When did coaching, I suppose, come into your world in a formal way? Or whether you call it coaching or training, is that what got you from start to 3 years, number one? Or did coaching and learning from others come later?
Yeah, I'll probably flip that on. You've said that to me a couple of times, and that's an issue you've got. So you've got an issue there, because if you think about the people that you've coached, and you say, I'm taking notes, but if you actually stop for a minute and think about all the great people that you've coached, they take notes off everyone. So when you think you're coming into a room and, you come in our room and think, Paul's in here, he's a coach, and I'm going to say stuff, and it's not for him, it is for me, because the right stuff said at the right time is what you need. And sometimes it may be something we know, but no one actually says it to us. So it may be that that you've got to get out there and do X, Y, and Z, but you keep telling yourself, because it's about that little voice in your head, that you can put that off. But because you come in a room here and you would maybe take the opportunity to be a bit open to say, Paul, like you would do every day, like you would do this and you would do that, and I'm sitting there going, fuck, I've done that for ages, fuck, I should be. So you leave, and I've got this, you've just put this wave of guilt over me, and I've gone out and just totally changed my tact. That's the gift of being a speaker. And I know during my years where I've kept growing my business, if you've got this thing inside of you that you're really careful to never say what you don't do, when you go on stage, if you say something that you haven't done for a while, it's amazing how within 3 minutes of coming off stage, you ring the office to get it
to start going again. Yeah.
Speaking keeps all elite performers on track.
Yeah.
Speaking and good speakers, when the words flow out of their mouths and it feels like you're listening to an amazing poet or singer or performer, it's because they can do that out of drawing into what is their mind, and it is genuine. When they're struggling up there, they're trying to question, their subconscious is questioning, have you or did you really do that? And it is the same way when an elite agent walks into a lounge room, and no matter what the agent has said to the owners in front of them, they actually aren't hearing. They're caught up in this amazing feeling of safety, trust, and it's because of the tone, the calmness, the delivery, and the words they aren't even really probably taking in, but it's the aura they give off because of what they're saying is so genuine. It's so much what they're going to do if you agree to come with me. It's so going to happen how I'm telling you right now, that it comes out of them with so much honesty that hits them, not the words. And that's something you can tell when you're at that level. And so when you come into a room, you gift a lot of the time when you don't know you're gifting. So, and a lot of elite people are always looking for that one little thing that they may have forgotten about. So it's never, old stuff is never not useful. And sometimes to one person, you're the new knowledge, and to another person, you're the trigger. But you can be both, and both can have an impact or an influence as a coach, not just the people you maybe think yourself. In that sense.
For sure.
So,
I've certainly been guilty of it before, because I heard someone say, you can't undervalue information. Information, depending on what it is, but don't necessarily undervalue information just because you've known it for a long time. Because what if it's someone else first time being exposed to the pot of gold?
Yeah, it is. I think the best, it is such a jigsaw. It's a jigsaw puzzle, and sometimes the piece just isn't obvious, and sometimes the piece is something you don't want, and sometimes because that could be moving office, that could be stop doing things that you're not good at doing but you like doing. There's so many factors that come into it. But if I was gonna my key thing, and if I was going to jump ahead of what your questions and we talk about success, the ability to control your mind will not just make you an elite agent, it also will allow you to try and be at the same time an elite husband, an elite friend, an elite son to your parents, an elite dad to your daughter or son, an elite colleague. Because controlling your mind allows you to be present in what's going on. Controlling your mind allows you to not make things that don't need to be magnified, giving them a stage that maybe allows you to race to places that never need to be checked out, thought about, or analysed. Wow. Controlling your mind allows you to be listened to because you're able to speak back to them and they can see that you have been listening. And controlling your mind is a skill that can help anyone. It's such a hard thing to do.
Have you got a resource on that? Because it's funny, right place, right time, that for someone like myself, I'm a bit of a hard on the sleeve guy, and it's been an asset certainly, but with that asset has certainly come a liability. It's like that song "Killing Me Softly," that you're singing my life with your words right there. Yeah. Have you got any resources when you say, because these are say control your mind? Well, when your mind's in that runaway zone, what have you got any resources that you've ever used?
Adversity. It's really good.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so just two cups of adversity, taken for a short period. It's nothing like a bit of fucking adversity to control a bit of mindset. Reflection is something that I think is essential. But if I was to say, I pull little bits from everywhere. I think once you get entrenched in this hunger to find out how everyone does it differently, because it is differently. If we go back to where we started speaking at the start of this podcast, it's not about what the book says to do. It's about all these things people do to control their mind, to get the best out of them, and what can I take out of each one of them to find my own secret code. And unfortunately, that could take 10 years, that could take 20 years, but I think what you first start learning are the things that trigger you to be not in control of your mind. So what would that be? There's such simple things these days. It's like people you love, but you don't need to see their Facebook statuses. So, control your status, control what goes on your feeds. Check in by looking them up to know how they're going, but controlling the incoming distractions are so important. Know that that's not for always. Solitude is one of the greatest things, I think, if you're going to go to control a busy life and a busy mind. There's got to be somewhere you go where you can hide without feeling guilty, and other people understanding that you may be going there for no reason other than to sit in quiet and think about who you want to become, what you want to do, what's important to you. And it's like doing an audit of your life. You can't do that in everyday living. You can't take the dog for a walk and do that. It's just not there. And if there's one thing I realised was that if I can go away for certain periods after bursts of energy, bursts of performance, bursts of stress that I've absorbed, and sit for even 48 hours, I'm such a better person coming back. My clarity, my breathing, my anxiety, my expectations of people, the way I see events are totally different in just a short lightning bolt of just solitude, of nothing. Being somewhere and having nothing on the agenda except time to sit still. And sometimes people find that through meditation, and I struggle with a bit with that. I think everyone's got their form of that, and again, you have to. I recently took up floating, and I really enjoyed that.
Oh, like a float tank?
Yeah, float tank. I really enjoyed that. But you've got to constantly find those things. For me, it's marathon running.
I was going to say, how does physicality play?
Yeah,
I've seen you do
massive,
marathons for like half a day or whatever that takes.
I'd be amongst the top 10% of the fattest international marathon runners in the world. I'm not I don't look like a marathon. The Kenyans...
And yet I've seen you smash them out, man.
The Kenyans or the Ethiopians don't get scared when they see me rolling up. They don't think they're in for a hard day. I'm about to run my 25th marathon in 3 weeks.
Okay.
They're in Boston.
Yeah, the Boston Marathon.
In Boston. So I started off running to the letterbox and back, and ended up running, 3 ultra marathons, which are 100 Ks each. Wow. 75K marathons. But I met some of the most amazing people through that passion. I absolutely know that there's no doubt that during some of the toughest times that I've been through in my life, without my running, I would have found it really difficult to make any. And when we're going through our toughest times, it's where our individual choices are critical. Like every choice kind of leads to another escape plan. Every choice leads to another position of getting forward. And without clarity, you're clouded in all this stress and anxiety. That can create so much aggression, so much anxiety, depending who you are. To be able to go and even run and share a laugh and start the day with someone that you trust. And, if I look at my running group over, I've been running for, near on 20 years, they're just not always and most of the time the type of people that outside of meeting at 5 o'clock in the morning that I would socialise with, and that's the magic in it. You're just out there, and we've shared divorces, we've shared bankruptcy, we've shared kids' problems, wife problems, health problems, and running has been a place to share and enjoy, not about the marathons. The marathons, because of the physicality of the event, you can't cheat the system. You can't wing 42 Ks very often. So the marathon is a bit like an auction date. It makes you work towards something, and it makes you get up those mornings that you don't want to go because you don't want to let your mates down. And if you don't train, you're going to pay big time in the race because there's no escaping it once the gun goes. So you've got to put in the hard work to get the results. And so for me, albeit physically I'm just absolutely challenged, being a short, stumpy, heavy Croatian. I can't remember any Croatian world champion marathon runners. Everything says that I should pick another sport.
Yeah, you should be lifting or whatever the case may be.
The sport itself is probably the backbone of keeping all my shit together.
Yeah, wow. So we've got to find our own, because when you described what you get out of that, for me, that was wrestling. You know, with that camaraderie that is not shared anywhere but either at training or at a competition where that is. It's interesting.
It also found that running's something that it's great to do on your own, but it's great to do it in a team, but you can do it at any time, any location, any place. And when you are living such a busy life, you know, so many opportunities come up to have excuses about things, and it's hard to play team sport. So what running allows is to go and find a couple of other psychopaths that live incredibly stupid lives that can meet you at 5 o'clock at stupid hour and spend time with you talking about the stupid stuff they do, and you can find those people. They're around, and I've absolutely loved having the opportunity to do that, and it's allowed me to grow a passion into being. You know, I was able to do in the last couple of years the London Marathon, the Paris Marathon, New York Marathon. I did Death Valley Marathon in December, the Gold Coast Marathon.
You said you're never going to do that again. You're do it again.
I don't know. The Death Valley Marathon, which I booked late at night with my wife's permission, is one of those stupid things you do when you buy something off the tally just out of fatigue. I'll never do that again.
Was that environmentally it was challenging? Or
Is
that what the problem was? Just the sheer...
And I was underdone, and it was challenging. Boston I'm not ready for, so with Boston, and I think this is the magic out of what it teaches you. I've had some health issues since Death Valley, just totally unprepared for Boston. But Boston in the marathon world is the blue ribbon event. I'll never qualify speed-wise, but I want a ballot. So if I want a ballot out of all these people that wish they were going, a message says to me, no matter where your fitness is at the moment, it's your turn to go. Nice. And whatever I take out of that day will be a gift, not the time. It'll be when I hit the wall, you know, after the first 300 metres, I'll have to work my way mentally through that. And when people ask you the time, I always think, what does it mean to them? Because if you ask most marathon runners who have been seasoned,
what a good time is.
No, they don't. So you can lie all you want, but I look at every event, whether I'm really prepared or not prepared, what can I take out of this? And it's not dissimilar to if you talk to some of the most elite salespeople in our industry, when they do lose, and we do lose, it's just an amazing opportunity to learn about finding your best, about finding the ability not to be jealous, about finding the ability to not give yourself an excuse why you're lost, about finding the ability to think, I don't care. It's about finding the ability to not self-talk in a way that you check the internet every day and celebrate they're not under offer. Finding the ability to drive past their home open and see that there's no one there and being happy that no one's there instead of thinking, wow, what a shame. And so it gives you an opportunity to flip your mindset, which goes back to mindset control.
Yeah.
So they're things that are challenging, and everything I talk about today, it's not for everybody. It's for people that are ready for it.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt that I would think about things that I heard at ARIC many, many years ago that meant nothing. And I think one of those people that I spoke about recently was Dr. Fred, Dr. Fred Gross, who I've just spent the last 2 years as him being my mentor and coach. Wow. And Dr. Fred asked me, why so long? Why did it take you so long to join my program? And I said, honestly, Dr. Fred, if I was to answer that truly, is that I didn't think what you had to offer was appealing to me. And that's just a simple answer. But when I found myself in a rut and I went over what your course, it was like, wow, why didn't I do this 5 years ago? Because his content wasn't to blame. I was the one that just wasn't ready for it. But, a couple of years ago, it was like he wrote the whole program
for you,
thinking about me.
Yeah.
But I was just ready for that. So hopefully what I've shared today makes sense today. And, honestly, it's not about one size fits all. It's about what you're ready for. And there may be things in there that don't actually make sense, like with any person you listen to. But if you're mindful about being better, you always develop a skill which is about don't need it now, but don't need to put it in the bin. I might just put that over there in case I need it. So where we tend to go yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, the good to great performers go yes, love that, don't need that right now, but could do so. I'll keep it out there in the back of my mind, but I won't say no to it. The people that are looking to just get out there and don't look at what ways they can build a business are just looking for these things that are great, and usually find, because they're not supported by other things, they're not as good as they sound when you hear them and do them. But if they're supported by an ability to actually not be so fixed on just trying to find this magic thing that's going to turn their careers around, and be able to sit comfortably with things that they don't necessarily need but don't disapprove of it. And social media has been one of those great topics that everyone had to have a answer on it. It's like Bitcoin, I know Chris Gilmore secretly has bought like $200,000 worth, but out there says to everyone he doesn't in it. But, Chris Gilmore can sit there about Bitcoin and go, no, but why do we need to say yes or no about Bitcoin? Why don't we say, oh, interesting. Yeah, sit back and then go, fuck. Yeah. Or go, but we seem to be so happy that someone lost their life savings because they took a punt. Yeah. And then are we happy when they're multimillionaires? Well, is that fair or not? Well, it's just nothing. It doesn't have to concern. You don't have to have an opinion on it. Yeah. And I think the art of not having an opinion can be very helpful at times. You're a bit vulnerable. When you're flying, nothing really bothers you. It's when you're struggling that things bother you, and it's not the medicine you need to get back to your best. And that's, these skills only happen at a crisis. Like when you're in a crisis, you find how skillful you are. Not when you're you're in that lucky patch where just nothing can go wrong for you.
Or even the medium patch, you're right. It's when it's back against the wall. I remember, because it was years ago, I've been struggling with weight forever. And I read the 4-Hour Body, to the point you just made. I read the 4-Hour Body cover to cover. And Tim Ferriss is a genius, so I just put that aside for maybe 2 years. But literally in November, I picked that bad boy up and I said, I'm just going to read chapter 1. Because it's so complex, because Tim's a genius, Yeah. And I just implemented chapter 1. And I habitualized it so that I did chapter 1. Then I read chapter 2 and I just did that. So by the end, I'm on all these supplements that he says, and there's the calcium and all this weirdness, but it started with no rice. Then it went to no bread, and it was just very simple. But that resource didn't change. It was as good 2 years ago as it was in December. But I just had to put it there and say, he's smart. I liked him. Yeah. We'll get to him when I'm ready.
You touch on a really good point, because often I hear feedback from people that I would just be chatting to or share with, and they'll say, oh, boy, I'm not really one of those readers. I'm not really, but when you discover they're not really readers, well, they're not really normally listeners either. So as they say, I don't really read, I don't really listen to audio either.
Yeah. Oh, for me, I'm not a big reader. I'll discipline myself to read. I've probably read 300 or 400 books.
Yeah.
But I've listened to thousands of hours of audio.
Yeah.
And you included hundreds of hours of Paul Tonich in
Yeah,
years.
I do both. But what if I was going to give, again, a bit of advice about things that I found worked really well that maybe listeners can reconsider. It's about, even with books, there's nothing says you buy a book that you need to read it right then and there. But I believe that you buy a book for a reason that you don't have to work out. Just subconsciously, if you've bought that book at an airport or in a bookshop, something says you need that. But it doesn't mean also that people go, you get a book, I've got to read the whole lot. Because if you get anything on personal development or anything that in any way is working towards, it's a strategy, it's not a story, the chapters are what the gold are, and you don't need all of them. Because that book wasn't, again, one size fits all. So I can't remember where I heard this, and I can't remember how long ago it was, but it was a fair way ago that I stopped reading books and I started reading multiple chapters of multiple books all at the same time. Because if you don't do that, it's like saying, I'm going to eat the vanilla ice cream while I'm here at this ice cream shop until all the vanilla's finished, and then I don't feel like eating chocolate, where if you were left there on your own and you could take a scoop of vanilla, a scoop of this, why wouldn't we have scoops of everybody all in that 1 week? That mash that all together is so beneficial because you got so entrenched because of the variety of insights instead of sticking to just one. So why wouldn't in your week you have one chapter of Alan Peace, one chapter of John Maxwell, one chapter of Jim Rohn, one chapter of Tim Ferriss, one chapter of Anthony Robbins, one chapter of Robin Sharma. What a magnificent week of a smorgasbord of angles, attitudes, information. And you'll find that if you actually give yourself the opportunity to trust yourself just to open the book at wherever it is, guess what? That's fucking for you. And accept that's your part of that book that needs to be read. And whether you think that's a bit weird, whether you think that's doesn't make sense, cast that aside and keep it basic. It's a great way to do it. Like try random knowledge and see what you come up with, and then have 7 or 8 of those books lying around. So I have books positioned everywhere just for a chapter, and you'll find that it's easier to take in because you get in a mode where you're reading the book just because you think I've got to read it because I bought it, or I've got to finish this book. You don't not finish a book because we're taught that in school to read the book. Just read the chapters and make those chapters. It'd be a shame to get 3 years down the track after purchasing a book and it's the book that you needed 3 years ago, but you didn't finish the others first, so you didn't get to that one. And it is such a simple thing, but such a it can make a dynamic difference to the way you approach things because of the variety of information you have in a condensed time. Yeah,
it's funny that we mentioned Tim a few times. His last 2 books are exactly what you said in one book. Tools of Titans and Tribe of Mentors are that.
Yeah, I've got both. I've got the books and the audio. And again, his books are so based around being able to be picked up, consumed in edible bites, and not touch it for a year. And gold, such an easy way to do it. And his info in both those books are nothing short of just so current, but built around the fundamentals of business.
So, and I love that he's deconstructed the world's best, found the commonalities, and gives us those commonalities. I love it. I mean, that's kind of what this podcast is about. I love it when I find something that you've got in common with Jay, got in common with Matt and Chris or whomever. That's a principle that needs to be put in the Bible. And yet the way you guys are different, you run marathons and Matt surfs and Jay flies planes or whatever. Well, those things aren't as instructional as the things that you guys.
I thought you were going to say Matt's fit and good looking. So.
Well, that's what you got in common, of course.
How old is he?
He's my age, 45.
Oh fuck! I'm 45 as well. Yeah.
Well, there's 72.
Pardon?
72.
72. Yeah. Good year.
Yeah. Naomi as well. So there you go.
Oh, there you go.
Here's to us. Man, thanks for hanging, man. That was really good.
Wow. Well, there you go. I hope you liked the episode. If you liked that, then what you need to do is you need to subscribe. You need to get more of this craziness because we got more are coming. I'm never standing still, and we've got so many more guests. We've got so many more strategies, more out-of-the-box thinking. So if you haven't subscribed, literally, you're like throwing away thousands of dollars. Because I tell you, if you haven't subscribed, you don't come back. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to find you, I'm going to market to you, and I'm going to charge you for the very stuff that on this podcast we give away for free. So whack that subscribe button on whatever your favourite podcast weapon of destruction is, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now.